Good evening. For those of you here tonight with us, welcome. And if you would, please silence your cell phones. Be advised that these proceedings are being recorded. For those physically present with us in the council chamber who desire to address the city council during the meeting, please complete a request to speak form. They are available at the front counter and present it to the city clerk. Speakers physically present and those participating via Zoom will be called upon at the appropriate time, and each person is allowed 3 minutes speaking time. Our city clerk will now make a Zoom broadcasting announcement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As of June 15th, the City of Grand Terrace reopened its public meetings. If you would like to participate telephonically and speak on an agenda item, you can access the meeting by dialing 1-669-900-9128. Enter meeting ID 856-5032-1907 and password number 809976. You will be placed in the waiting room muted until it is your turn to speak. You may also submit your comments by sending them to ccpubliccomment@grandterrace-ca.gov. The City of Grand Terrace thanks you for doing your part preventing the spread of COVID-19.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll call together the City Council. City Council as successor agency to the Community Redevelopment Agency and Housing Authority meeting for January 11th, 2022. Tonight, our invocation will be offered by Pastor Juan Cervantes of Family of God Church, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Jeff Allen. If you would, please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I just want to make some corrections too. I'm also the pastor of Sierra Vista Baptist Church in Colton. Amen. And let us pray. Lord God in heaven, Lord, I ask you, Lord, for the Holy Spirit to fill this chamber, Lord. I pray, Lord, for you move, Lord, with a great power. I ask you, Lord, for just your will to be done. And I want to thank you, Lord, for this beautiful city that there is here. And I pray, Lord, for those leaders. Those leaders have been elected by the citizens of this city, but you have ordained them. I ask you, Lord, that you put great responsibility upon them, and I ask you, Lord, for you use the wisdom, and then you bestow it, and you give them a tremendous amount of mercy, the same type of mercy and love that you have, that it is required for us to live in peace. And I ask you, Lord, to give us great peace during this upcoming year. I pray, Lord, for all the things that might come up, but I ask you, Lord, that you give this city tremendous amount of peace, and you use these leaders for your own purpose. Thank you, Lord, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
So let's all join together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Juan. Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Wilson.
I am here.
Councilmember Robles. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Present.
Mayor McNabo.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. So do we have any reordering of, additions to, or removal of items from our agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Due to a scheduling conflict, new employee introduction of Budget Officer Cindy Rushing is being removed from the agenda.
That was under special presentations? Okay, thank you. All right, so we will move to our special presentations, of which we have one, GT Cars and Coffee Santa Claus Toy Drive Cruise. I have Mr. Johan Gallo has given us this presentation, so please, welcome.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the council, and Happy New Year. In a few minutes, I'm going to have our city clerk play a short video for you, and I promise it is short.
But I do want to just take a moment and thank you for all the support that you've given us, the staff has given us to make sure that we could do this. And I'll talk a little bit more, but first I'll let her show the video. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, she's got to finish her coffee. Altogether, we had 22 vehicles in this, and then we had 3 collection vehicles. And as we went through the cruise, it's very humbling to know that we collected over 1,500 toys. And thanks to those efforts, collectively between grocery outlets, Woody's, and the cruise, they were able, through Sick and Tired Sobriety Recovery Home and Community and Unity, they were able to take care of the kids and give them, on the average, 4 to 5 toys instead of just 1 or 2 like they'd been able to do in prior years. That's Becky's new ride. That's former Mayor Matson's daughter, who was the last minute addition. Luckily, I had extra forms for her to sign. Again, I want to thank Assistant Chief Mejia and Lieutenant Lane and Deputy Carlson for all the work that they did to move this thing along. We had planned for the route to take 2 hours with the assistance of the Sheriff's Department, doing rolling stops at the intersections. We finished it in about 1 hour and 15 minutes. And the idea to have the collection vehicles at the end worked out really well with the help of the Lions Club and the Boy Scouts, because each block we had corners where they were collecting the toys, because the first year was kind of dangerous. The kids were running out to all the vehicles to give the toys, and it was so important for those kids to be able to put the toys in the vehicle. We had to find a safer way to do it. These are some of the pictures of all the toys that were collected from the cruise. And as we were discussing this with Kathy Williams Braxton and her husband John, they are going to work with the city of Grand Terrace to move this event here next year. And they're going to work to move it to Rollins Park. And the plan right now is, and I've been in contact with Frankie, and I understand that December 1st will be Light Up Grand Terrace. The following Friday will be our cruise, and we'll try and schedule it that way in the future so we have kind of a continuous event going on in Grand Terrace for the month of December. And then finally, December 17th, they will do the event at Rollins Park, And this is an all-out event. You'll see in some of these pictures the amazing things that they do. They have the San Bernardino Health RV there, so kids can get checkups, they can get dental visits. They have different things and programs that the kids will get, that the families will get. Not only did all of the families walk away with toys for their kids, they walked away with groceries and other things and toiletries and things like that. Kathy Braxton's been doing this a long time, and this will be her 7th year of doing this. At the 11th hour, she got a call from Walmart saying they had 7 pallets that needed to be picked up of clothes, toiletries, jackets, shoes, all for the kids to be donated to help these families. So I think it will be a great event for Grand Terrace to do this. Our community really cares. And believe me, the first year it was by a wing and a prayer that we did this thing. And to see the outcome the first year, as disorganized as we were, and then to see the outcome this year, it does warm the heart. And so with that, the video will end in just a minute here. But again, I want to thank everybody that was involved. The Lions Club came through in a big way. I appreciate Mike Carrera going around, taking all the videos. I was able to put everything together in this video to create it, to make sure that everybody was acknowledged for the work that they did. So the goal is to continue this on the long term with the support of the Lions Club, the city, and all those that were working with us. We think it'll be a great event for the city, and I look forward to doing it every year, as long as I'm looking down at the grass and not up at the roots. Any questions for me?
I'll just say thank you so much for the effort that you put in and that everybody put into this. It was a wonderful procession.
Thank you.
And I heard a lot of people exclaiming how wonderful it was, and it really does help to make the holidays something special.
It does, and just one final comment. It was really touching for me for Kathy Braxton and John to let me know that they have been working with Santa Claus Incorporated for many years out of San Bernardino. That place is very near and dear to my heart because I was that kid that didn't have a Christmas. I was that kid that was relying on strangers to come through for me when our family moved here from Belgium in 1960. So believe me, maybe not paying it forward, but paying it now. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's wonderful to hear about all the children that wanted to give toys. That's heartwarming. All right, so that's our one special presentation. We'll move on to our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar. Are there any requests for removal of items? All right, seeing none, I'll move forward to our special note here. Agenda item C4, which is the number 4 on the consent calendar also. This is a combined city council. City council is a successor agency to the Community Redevelopment Agency and Housing Authority item. Therefore, the item will be voted upon by the city council. City council is a successor agency to the Community Redevelopment Agency and Housing Authority. And we're going to do it all at one time as the same people, unless our city attorney wants us to vote on it 3 times.
Actually, I think 3 times would be best, as you know.
All right, I'll entertain a motion as the city council for the entire consent calendar.
I'll make a motion as for the entire consent calendar.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Allen, second by Councilmember Wilson for the entire consent calendar as the city council. Do we get to vote, or are we doing roll call vote?
We'll do a roll call vote.
All right, please call the vote then.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey?
Yes.
Mayor McNabo?
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. All right, we will put our city council, a successor agency hat to the Community Redevelopment Agency hats on right now and attend to item 4. I'll entertain a motion for that item.
I'll move the item number 4 as a successor agency. Is that what you need to hear?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll second it for the sake of a vote. May we move forward with the roll call?
Board Member Allen?
Yes.
Board Member Wilson?
Yes.
Board Member Robles? Yes. Vice Chair Hussey?
Yes.
And Chair McNabo.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. All right, we're taking item 4 as the Housing Authority. So put your Housing Authority hats on. And if I could have a motion by the Housing Authority board member, please.
Make that motion too.
All right,
Second.
all right, thank you. Motion by Allen, second by Hussey. Please call the vote.
Board Member Allen?
Yes.
Board Member Wilson?
Yes.
Board Member Robles? Yes. Vice Chair Hussey?
Yes.
Chair McNabo.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
very nice. Thank you all for your cooperation on that. We'll move on to public comment. This is our public comment opportunity for members of the public to comment on items not appearing on our regular agenda this evening. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. A brief response may be requested from staff to questions raised during public comment, and an item may be requested to be agendized for a future meeting. And we will be listening as the City Council. We have our City Council hats back on. Are there requests to speak during this time? Thank you. Becky Giroux.
Good evening, Mayor McNabo, City Council members, city staff, and residents of Grand Terrace. I'm Becky Giroux, 21891 Vivienda Avenue, Grand Terrace, since 1998. My husband and I have been members of the Grand Terrace Lions Club since 2014. The Lions Club is a nonprofit charity organization, and so while we do work around the city of Grand Terrace and other areas, people are always asking, who are Lions? What do they do? The Lions meet the needs of local communities and the world. We're a volunteer organization in 206 countries with a common belief that community is what we make it. We're well known for successful initiatives in vision health, caring for the environment, support of our youth programs, feeding the hungry, aiding seniors and disabled. At the heart of the Lions Club, there's one constant, and that's service. Giving your time and energy to others is a fantastic way to help your community, as we witnessed with Grand Terrace Cars and Coffee. So I'm here tonight to represent the Grand Terrace Lions Club in support of the Grand Terrace Cars and Coffee Santa Claus Toy Drive Cruise. Excuse me. It was a very successful event. As Johan stated, we collected over 1,500 gifts from our residents of Grand Terrace for the children for the Sick and Tired Recovery Home and the Community and Unity for Better Living and Wellness Outreach. This success comes from our community collaboration with our leader, Johan Gallo, Mike Miller from Woody's Classic Grill and his staff, Stater Brothers and their staff, Grocery Outlet and their staff, Rob's Shop, our wonderful Grand Terrace Fire Department, and major kudos also to our Grand Terrace San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. And of course, our city leaders and the residents of Grand Terrace. Without any of these, this would not have been possible. So when caring people join together, we roll up our sleeves, we take action to make our community better. It's a beautiful thing, and it's an incredible feeling. When we all got to Woody's that night to drop off the toys, all of us were just elated. They made hot cocoa for us. It was just a wonderful feeling to be able to give back. That's Lions Club, and that's community. The Lions Club is in support of the annual Grand Terrace Cars and Coffee Santa Claus Toy Drive, and we pray that the leaders of our community feel the same way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Giroux. And thank you to the Lions for the support that they give to the community. Any other requests to speak during this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. Returning to our agenda, public hearings, we have none. Unfinished business, we've taken care of all of it, so nothing unfinished. We'll move to new business, of which we have one item, which is item number 6, procedure for filling a city council vacancy. And we will have our city attorney, Adrian Guerra, present this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year.
So this item is procedure for filling a city council vacancy. The staff report supports City Council goal number 5, engaging in proactive communications, allowing community input on potential procedures for filling a city council vacancy. This item was requested by Councilmember Robles last year to consider the adoption of a policy to govern how the city council would fill a vacancy. And specifically, what was proposed was a policy whereby a person who was a candidate for office, but was not elected because they didn't get the number of votes necessary, but was next in line. So if there were 3 candidates, number 4, who got the highest votes, would be the one automatically appointed to fill a city council vote, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So state law provides that if there is a council member who leaves their seat for whatever reason, and a vacancy occurs, the city council has 2 options to fill the vacancy. The first one is to appoint someone, and the second is to call a special election. Whichever choice, the council has 60 days to take the action. Now, under state law, there's a procedure for calling a special election, and there are definite guidelines for that, and that would be governed by state law, no argument there. However, there's really no process outlined in the state law to appoint. So it's really left to each city council in their discretion to determine who they want to fill the seat. In my experience, I'm not aware of any city that I've worked with that actually has a procedure to do that. Here, if the council did want to establish a policy, there would be 3 restrictions on doing it. Number 1 is, as stated earlier, the appointment must be made in 60 days. Second, there are restrictions on the length of the term depending on when the vacancy occurs. So for example, I believe there's a general election coming up within 130 days, that appointment would be for the appointment of the 130 days until that next election. So the term would be governed by state law. And third, the appointee must otherwise be eligible. So in terms of residency, age, things of that sort, those are already required for anybody serving as a city council member. So if the council did decide to adopt a policy, they can. Things to possibly consider would be to accept applications, conduct interviews, and appoint without any criteria whatsoever, and that's usually the standard that I've seen. The second option, which was proposed by Councilmember Robles as consideration for the council, is to appoint the next highest vote getter from the last general municipal election. So again, the example would be, say there are 5 candidates for office, 3 seats, 3 get elected because they got the 3 highest votes. The policy idea here would be number 4. Whoever came out 4th would be automatically appointed to the city council based on your policy. So that would be another concept. Another idea is to establish a criteria to be considered for appointment. So rather than a mandatory appointment of the 4th highest in that example, it could be a criteria like maybe somebody who has contributed to the community, somebody who has previously ran for office and came in 4th or next highest vote getter. It could be a factor versus a mandate. So that'd be another idea to consider. So again, do you make it mandatory or do you provide a list of things to consider for appointment? Now, the other interesting thing is, as you all know, a policy, I don't know what happens. A policy can always be rescinded by a future city council. So it really is a matter of, do you want to adopt it by resolution or do you want to adopt it by ordinance? If you adopt it by resolution, all the council has to do is ask that that resolution be placed on the agenda at a future meeting, and it be rescinded, amended, however you want. So there's a lot of flexibility with the resolution. If by ordinance, as you know, ordinances require 2 readings and then a 30-day waiting period before it's effective. So you can do it by ordinance, and it very likely will be effective next time there is a vacancy that comes up, unless we can get the ordinance adopted within the 60-day period, and then you change it. So just something to think about if you chose to do it by ordinance. So for tonight, really, I think Councilmember Robles had asked for this item. I think for us, for staff, the direction would be, number 1, is the council interested in adopting a policy? Number 1. Number 2, if so, what would that policy look like? And then number 3, would you want that adopted via an ordinance or a resolution? So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
There is one council seat that is just it runs at the same election as the mayoral seat. So
Yes.
so there may only be 2 candidates. And the example you were giving focuses on the time when we have the 3 council seats.
Yes.
And so it sounds to me like there's a lot more to the discussion about the next highest vote getter than, unless you had an example for that one as well.
So
So if there are 2 people running for the 1 seat,
yes.
and the person who is elected can't serve, then the next person would be the one that would be mandated to fill that seat,
Under the policy.
under the suggested policy.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The other nuance, and again, I didn't want to get into the weeds of it, but another nuance would be, there are situations in one of my other cities where we don't get a lot of candidates to run for office. So sometimes you only get 2 candidates for 2 seats. So in that situation, the council usually calls off the election, and those 2 people are deemed appointed. So in that case, there would not be a 3rd person to automatically get the seat. So that would be a factor we'd have to include in the policy.
Questions? Councilmember Allen.
Excuse me. So we've had a few situations in the past where we've had vacancies on our council. And most of the time, I think I've noticed that they've been handled in the same way, where through an appointment, the appointment process. So I was wondering, but we don't actually have that as a policy, or as a resolution or anything. It's just, we've just always done it that way, right?
I think it's an option, but we don't have guidelines, is
Yeah,
what I believe I heard you say.
That is correct. So under state law, each city council has the option to appoint or call a special election.
Yeah.
My presumption is, in the past when it's occurred, the council has opted to just appoint.
Is there a benefit to having it enshrined as a policy or resolution to do, if we kept that same appointment process we've been using?
Again, if the council finds that helpful in terms of guidance and making a decision easy, then that could be helpful. But I could see a future city council saying, I don't want my hands tied to this policy. We may not agree with that 4th person. That's just an idea. So you'd have to really evaluate that. But again, as I stated earlier, the council could always rescind the policy.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember Robles.
Does anybody know the date that I requested that?
I would say last spring or summer.
Before the election though, right? Before we had,
I believe it was April of 2021, if I remember correctly.
okay. All right. So in our package, you had sent, and you're not showing it here, where a city did a survey to see what the citizens wanted.
Yes.
And so
Yes, and I can elaborate on that further. So, yeah, we looked at 2 examples, Brentwood and Santa Maria. Brentwood, they had done a survey. It was an informal survey of their residents, and Brentwood had decided, yes, go with the appointment route. Number 1 was it's cheaper, and I'm sure the city clerk could elaborate on that. If we had to call a special election, there's significant cost for that. So from a cost standpoint, appointment makes much more sense. Number two, they found it helpful in the sense that, number one, it provided clear guidance as to who would be the next appointee. Second, the fact that they've already run and there were significant votes in the community to appoint or to elect that person, that also gave some support for that type of policy.
So there could be some guidelines, because we can't think of every situation out there. And I don't think I was advocating that it would be, you know, a succession forever kind of thing. But, you know, I think right after an election, you have 4 people for at least 2 years. And in my experience, the vacancies, I've dealt with a whole bunch of them. And in my personal thing, I was torn like a dog between 2 factions fighting, and was not selected, you know, immediately after the election. So, and there was quite a number of people running, so, you know, or there were, maybe if there was 2, you could just, or in that case, a special election. But there are instances where you have, in other cities where there's a requirement for district voting, because the pattern is that entrenched people want to keep their own people. And so that works against a minority. And, you know, and putting someone else who's also a minority, but there's like 3 to 5% of the population, where the Hispanic group is like 40% of the population, and they voted for somebody and they're just swept away, is not good. But I would just think that there'd be some guidelines that we could put, because then we struggle every time. And then, if I don't remember correctly, Wilson and Hussey also applied, and they were rejected, and they won anyways. And before that, and I'll stop after that, we had a pattern where we created an incumbency where before 2010, they just appointed somebody, and they had the power of the incumbency, and it was just one little faction of this community. So I'm just trying to, and see if, you know, so if there's some guidelines, they're at least good for 2 years. And I don't think we'd want to go beyond 2 years on a stale election.
All right, further questions? Councilmember Wilson.
Adrian, the way this is being proposed, am I wrong, or is there no floor in relation to the number of votes a person got, or a percentage of votes?
Correct. There's nothing proposed at this time. However, if the council wanted to establish a floor or a
Here's my-
percentage,
Here's
that
my
could certainly be
concern. My
included.
concern is that the intention of an election is to represent the people. And appointing somebody is, you know, it's kind of a last-ditch effort. In the long run, we really want to let the system work. And I also understand really well, because I've experienced it, what Councilwoman Robles is talking about, so far as, you know, depending on the political climate, those kinds of situations can get abused. You know, appointments could be made by somebody that just to be able to strategically block a circumstance. So I would agree that if we were going to approach this whatsoever in the appointment arena, we would need to set a reasonable floor for the number of votes, so that we can make sure everybody gets represented.
Further questions? Councilmember Allen.
That, I can certainly understand what Councilmember Wilson was just explaining and relating to, but it seems like it ties our hands too much, or boxes us in maybe to a corner. And I think that I kind of like the idea of having a system that provides us with the most flexibility in choosing. You know, I mean, one of these options, it's talked about, you know, people who had done things in the community and all that. Well, that can be something that can be considered under any applicant, you know, not just, doesn't need to make it a criteria so that people who haven't had the opportunity to be a volunteer in the community feel shut out, things like that. So I like being able to be the most, whatever, you know, without restricting ourselves, where we have the most options. That's all.
Okay, so it sounds like we've moved into deliberations away from questions, so I'm going to open it up to public comment at this time. Is there any request to speak for this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we'll come back and we'll continue our deliberations. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Well, I see where this is going, because, you know, Mr. Wilson beat me out by 89 votes years ago. And then right after that, there was a vacancy. And I think it was requested that, since I came in second or whatever, to just go ahead and automatically take the seat because the voters voted for me, and the request was denied, and I had to go through the process anyway. And, you know, but I was humbled that I got picked. But the thing is, too, is when you run for the election and you're putting your name out there and you hustle, and then you go out there and you see somebody who's all of a sudden get put up to the podium that didn't run for the election, and it's kind of like wow, you know, you didn't put in the effort before, and all of a sudden you're asked, you want to run, you know, put your name in the hat. So it's kind of not degrading, but it's like, you know, I just did all this work, or somebody just did all this work, and why wouldn't they just pick me if I, you know, only lost by a couple votes? But I understand what Mr. Wilson's saying, because you don't want somebody who won by 75% and the next person that's next in line got 10%. You know, I don't know if that's representing the whole community, but then again, they came in second. So I understand both ways, and I have seen this, you know, I'm not pointing any fingers, but I have seen this where people have come up and it's been like, well, I want this person, I want that person, this person's in line with that person, this person's in line with that person. I was accused of that, and I wasn't in line with anybody's person. I just came up here on my own, you know, cognizance and stuff. But, you know, it's amazing what you get thrown under the bus for some stuff. So, and I think, and I remember when Mrs. Robles went, because I said, well, that lady right there should be the one on there because she answered everything, and then some guy got picked and didn't even do anything for the community. He got a beer room done. So I could see both sides of this, but I also see, you know, it's the people who put in the effort for it, you know, should be, you know, the ones that are placed. Now, I can't see why somebody who will run for election and all of a sudden say, win and say give up their seat now unless there's a medical emergency or something, you know, something happened in life. But I like these new rules here, and I think it's the voters are the ones who vote for who's in here. It's not up to us. Once the voters vote for somebody and they're appointed on the seats, it's up to us to all work together and do the better for this community. So I like how it is.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, so Councilmember Rose and then Councilmember Allen.
Well, certainly in the case where there was just two people, I was only 25 votes away, so there was no issue about what the voice of the people was. Now, I clearly am on board with Wilson. There has to be some kind of floor. You can't have, you know, one and then the person's way down the other thing. So it seems to me like we're looking more at a metric of, you know, how close was the election, you know, and if it's, I don't know what the votes were, but between you two, that's like a good place to look in the staff archives and about, you know, what percentage was that. And then two, you know, these rules are only good for 2 years after the most recent election. And then, of course, a new council can change it, but it's also abusing the vote of the people when people say, well, we don't hear any voter input. When you clearly had voter input, you just had election. And you had people that were nominated, because that's what getting the signatures is, and they were on the ballot, and they performed very well. And then it's, you know, kind of a bully approach to, well, we're not going to do that. You know, we don't want that person. because that person's going to create a 3-vote voting block, which, you know, and in my person's case, everybody was pointing their fingers at me, the people that I was supposed to be their buddies, you know, and the other people. And I didn't say anything, you know, I've been on the council for 9 years, but it was a very hideous action that the council took at that time to ignore my hard work and my efforts and the people that voted for me. You know, and it was kind of a kick in the teeth to say, well, we'll just get another minority and we'll point that person, and then that way I can't say anything because, you know, it's another minority. There are people that voted in this community and they wanted their vote honored. So when you had 2 people, you had a clear point. If there's 25 votes apart, you're not in any conundrum. But I would just like that, you know, it's guidelines, you know, it's, I've always respected Councilman Wilson because he's a strong constitutionalist, you know, and it's, if you can do what's best to the voice of the people, that's better than usurping that row and inserting ourselves in a way and say, you know, oh, it's too expensive to hear the voice of the people, so we'll just appoint. And then we'll appoint somebody without taking into consideration how they performed in the last election. Because my other 2 peers also went through it, and guess what? They're here. Obviously, the voice of the people was quite clear. So I think there's some guidelines, you know, of course, there'll be some flexibility in them, and just be good for 2 years. And there's situations too, you know, if someone were to resign, you know, someone told me that means that I would be the second highest vote getter, you know, but we don't know if that person's intentions are. So, you know, there's a lot of ifs, but again, we're getting close to, we're going to start being in another election year. So there's also the option, if you're X number of ways from an election, we could also just not vote, but not appoint somebody. Let's not create an incumbency. I'm done.
Right. The way that I look at this is that I would not want to create a mandate because I think there are so many different ways that the issue could present itself. And I don't think that we could imagine every single way that would come up. It's always been an option that another higher vote getter could be, but it hasn't really been spelled out to the council. So I think that would be helpful. One, I like the idea of special elections, but they do end up being very expensive. And then as we get close to another election, maybe part of the guidelines is within a certain number of days, the council considers leaving that seat open unless there's a really good reason to fill it before the next election. But I really support the idea of let's come up with some good guidelines to help a council in the future that is in that position. It's tough to choose somebody and it's tough to make a good decision, especially when there are no guidelines that come with it. And so part of the information that could go to the council could be, you know, how the person performed when they last ran for office. Have they ever run for office? Have they ever served as council? You know, and all those types of things that would be very helpful to a council to really determine how they want to move forward. So I would support the guidelines. Councilmember Allen.
So when you speak about supporting the guidelines, you want to are you talking about just that?
Well,
Not really
yeah.
putting let me ask you a question, not really setting a resolution yet? Because like you said a minute ago, because we really can't imagine all the scenarios that could occur, that could throw a kink, you know, in the whole plan or the system. And it sounds like what you're saying is like, what I would, rather than creating a new resolution or ordinance, to just, is there a way that we can decide it each time it occurs by using these guidelines we're going to give today or in the future? Because we may decide, like, the second vote getter, okay, yeah, like happened in 2016, 16 with I think with Bill. But then again, we've seen some recent scenarios where would we have wanted that second or third, so forth and so on down the line, and people can leave, and we're stuck without having any second or third vote getter. I think it's good that we can have guidelines, and so that each circumstance, each scenario being unique and different, we can address it as needed.
Right, and so what I'm saying is, what we have right now that comes before a council is you can determine to fill this seat through a special election, or you can determine to appoint, and then it's left up to the council to determine how they're going to appoint. And so that what I'm supporting is guidelines that would help the council that determines that they want to appoint instead of have a special election, and really has a nice path for how that whole process would work, instead of having to look around going, okay, how are we going to do this? And so my understanding would be that staff would come back to us with those suggested criteria and guidelines. Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, if that's the will of the council, yes. Another option would be to create an ad hoc committee of 2 council members to work with me and the city manager to come up with that policy, and then we bring that back for the full council consideration. Just an idea.
Okay. Councilmember Robles.
Yeah, it's just deliberation guidelines, so that when we're hit with that, we're not stumbling. And we have the flexibility, like, oh yeah, these are, but in this instance, it doesn't work for us, so.
All right, so do we want to ask staff to come back, or do we want to form an ad hoc?
What do you think?
I think we should make them guess what we want. I think they have more fun when we do that.
If you want to call it fun, sure. But we're happy to do that. I mean, we can definitely work something out.
Yeah, well, I think you've heard enough from us, kind of like, a range and closeness, a 2-year time frame, that kind of thing.
Right, so a 2-year life on the resolution, effectively, number one. Number two would be a resolution. Third, the vote getter criteria would be one factor to consider, among others. Okay.
Yeah, anything that I've heard suggested as guidelines from my colleagues, I wouldn't mind seeing come back.
Okay. And do you have an idea on the threshold amount? We were talking about the floor. Any guidance on that?
Therein lies the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the floor, I mean, instead of talking about a floor, why don't you say that, would have a range?
Well, I would say that if you were going to mandate that the next highest vote getter would be the person that would fill the seat, then you definitely would have to have a floor of votes. And so
Like
if it's just
100 votes?
if it's a guideline, maybe it's just something to consider.
Why don't we just put a floor of 100 votes?
I'm sure staff has some creative ideas of what they'll bring back to us.
Well, I find it interesting, Mayor, this is Doug Wilson, that when we looked at our censure information, what we found was that, what we were advised is that it is impossible to, even though the Senate, the United States Senate does this, it was impossible for the city council to vote a member of their council out of office, and the only way that a person could be removed was to be voted out by the public. But yeah, we're talking about a situation here where we could vote somebody in with maybe, well, like, it's kind of a kidding, but 100 votes. So that's why I mentioned the floor, because we really, our whole point is to try to keep equal representation. And granted, this is a caveat. This is an emergency issue. We have an emergency situation. We kind of grant ourselves some emergency powers to solve the problem for the time being. The solution, the overall solution, as Councilwoman Robles introduced, it is a temporary circumstance. So there's another integer that needs to be considered. How temporary is it?
Yeah.
And, what are we going to start measuring things against? Not just, not the amount of votes, but also, what kind of people are we going to be considering as worthy volunteers in this kind of capacity that would represent the people? Are we talking about someone that has a lot of history within the city, good or bad? which should be considered. It's just gets into a kind of a sticky wicket.
It's a tough position to be in.
So it should be interesting to see what you bring up.
Yeah. But if the, I mean, the citizens had voted for some people that I wouldn't have voted for, I mean, you know. But they did. So, just by the same token, they can't recall, you know, you can't remove another peer, only the voters can.
All right, so you have direction.
I have direction from the consensus of the
All right,
council.
very good.
Thank you.
So much. Good conversation. Thank you very much for that. And we will move to our agenda, request for future agenda items by City Council. We do not have any to entertain tonight, so we'll go to City Council communications. We will begin with Councilmember Jeff Allen.
Thank you, Mayor, and I just want to we've been saying it all evening because it's first meeting back after the new year, but I want to, anybody out there listening to us and watching us on Channel 3, I just want to say Happy New Year to all the residents of Grand Terrace, and thanks for coming back and joining us. And we've got some great things planned coming up this year, so stay tuned. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Doug Wilson.
I'd like to say congratulations to our new city manager. And I believe we have some new employees as well, and so congratulations to all those folks. And if there's any way that we can help, I foresee at least an opportunity for us to be, as council members, to be actively engaged, especially when it comes to some of the large-scale builder negotiations that we have. I think it would be important for the folks that have so much skin in the game to know that the council is actively engaged as well as the staff. So I think it's important maybe to either have an ad hoc or a single representative at least from the council at some of those type of meetings, which I know we're planning on having some regular meetings to try to kickstart our circumstance, our economic development, and so on. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I know also that there is a $20,000 minimum or something on this new AB or SB, one of the two, that talks about garbage disposal. And we can apply for it. Any city can apply for it. And the least you're going to get is 20 grand. We know we've got that coming down the tube. And any dime from somebody else's pocket is better than ours. So.
Well, it's
something
actually
to
our
look at.
taxpayer dollars that are coming back to us.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sylvia Robles.
Yeah, I just want to say during your presentation, Johanna, it was just wow for all the volunteer organizations that did that. God, I'm not going to say the year, I'll say my age. So when I was 3 years old, my father passed away, and there was 4 children, and so I got the one gift from Santa Claus. And little greedy me, I wanted more than one. So you guys really did a good job by getting more than one to the kids. And I also just want to also put out a shout out to the Women's Club. You know, that with this COVID and our aging of the club, you know, that they were able to pull it together and do the child help, and they helped 8 families with food and toys, and also more toys because of Paragon Tattoo collects toys for them. And so they did really well. Happy New Year to everyone. It's still, you know, I can't believe we're going to the 3rd year of this, and I just made a pact with myself on the way over here that to overcome this COVID inversion layer, that I'm going to come to these meetings and look at my serving the public here with some enthusiasm to overcome this fog that kind of makes moving and living right now a little bit difficult. And I'll just end with that, you know, I'm pray for all of us, you know, to get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Bill Hussey.
Well, I too want to thank John and the Lions Club and all the organizations, you know, during our holiday times. And like Ms. Robles said too, you know, and John, you know, I was part of those kids too that got one gift. And it's, makes your heart feel warm when people go out there and, strangers care. And that's one great thing about this city is, all the volunteers and helping each other, helping strangers. And it was a great parade, our cruise. And, but it was fun. But I think the city needs to invest in an old vehicle, so I stopped using my new truck for this to pick up gifts. So it might, I don't know if our city manager will do that, but a 66 Chevy pickup, would be nice. But I was waiting for one for Christmas and I never got it. I don't, but you guys, thank you very much. And, like I said, all the organizations throughout the whole year, Lions Club and everybody and the Women's Club and, our youth programs, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, we're really blessed. The city's really blessed for the tight-knit community that we have and everybody caring. So, and I wish everybody a happy new year. We'll see what this year has in store for us. It's live on faith and not fear. So God bless. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to end with saying, as others did, Happy New Year, and recognizing that we have residents who've come out to our council meeting, and the public speaking that happened tonight was heartwarming and was positive and talked about all the wonderful things in this community. So thank you so much for bringing that message in here to us tonight. That was so wonderful. And I'll just end with that and move on to our new city manager, Conrad Bolowich, and ask him to give us his city manager communications at this time.
Well, thank you, and I'm so proud and pleased to be able to contribute to the community. So there's two brief things. We got a notice today from the state that January is Earthquake Awareness Month. It just came in today. I would have got it on the agenda, but I want to get that out before the end of January. The state has an app that you can get from the Apple App Store or Google Play, and it's called My Shake, one word, My Shake app. And it's a kind of an earthquake warning app, earthquake information, earthquake preparedness. So anybody that's interested in that, please download that app, and it's really useful as far as, since we are on the fault lines. I think it was New Year's Day or whatever, we had a little bit of a shake, and those things come and go. It's always nice to get a little bit of heads up. Secondly, and I want to thank Noel, who one of our staff members who worked with the county to get us a bunch, and I'm talking a couple of thousand COVID the rapid test kits. We're distributing those. We've distributed them to the senior center, to some of the senior residential care facilities. We still have a couple thousand left over. What we'd like to do, and since Johan and the Lions group is here, before we leave, I'd like to work with you if you guys want to help us distribute some of those. Anybody in the community, any group that has a need or access, youth groups, sports facilities, places of worship, we're happy to distribute everything we have until we run out. And we'll also be placing some of them outside City Hall. We don't want your disease-infested body in City Hall, but outside City Hall, where you can pick up some of those if you need them. It'll be on the south side by the charging stations. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right. We have a couple of closed session items, so we will be recessing to closed session. The first item will be conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is Barton Road excess land. APNs 1167-231-10-000 and 1167-231-22-0000. City negotiator is Conrad Bolowich, city manager. Negotiating parties, San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, under negotiation, price and terms of payment. The second item is conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Property is APN 0276-213-47-0000. City negotiator is again our city manager. Negotiating parties to be determined, and under negotiation is price and terms of payment. Item number 2, I will be recusing myself from that discussion because it is within a certain distance of my home, and it may become a conflict at a later date, depending on the discussions. And so I'm staying out of the discussions at this point, and they will go where they go. And so that means that when we come back, our Mayor Pro Tem, Bill Hussey, will be reconvening. So if you're not here when council comes back, we will be adjourning to our next regular city council meeting to be held on Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And any request to have items placed on future agendas must be made in writing and submitted to the city clerk's office, and the request will be processed in accordance with council procedures. And so at this time, again, Happy New Year to you all. Thank you to those of you who took your time to come out and be with us here, and those of you that are with us on Zoom that we can't see. And we are in recess to close session.
Reconvene to open session. Council was in closed session and no reportable actions on the conference of real property on Barton Road access land, APN 1167-231-10-0000 and 1167-231-22-0000 and property APN 0276-213-47-000. So, like I said, no reportable actions this time. The next regular city council meeting will be held Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on a future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the city clerk's office, and requests will be processed in accordance with council procedures. That's it. Everybody have a good night.